one room. It's a session that's very close to my heart. We're going to talk about the role models of inclusive spaces. And those spaces are not about special futures just for a few. They're about designing everyday places, touch points with our society, so everyone can participate equally in public life their whole life, from childhood to adulthood. The Zero Project Inclusive Spaces report, published last year in 2025, shows that when universal design is applied seriously, schools, community centers, parks, workplaces, and even hot springs, which I like very much, become better spaces for everyone, not just for people with disabilities. This session will highlight the role models from around the world who prove that inclusion works at scale, whether in education, civil life, culture, sport, or, very important, democratic institutions. And I'm very proud that we have representatives of the Austrian Parliament here. We had an amazing event on Tuesday where we started into the Zero Project Conference week. And the Austrian Parliament is not only historically rich, it's very inclusive. And they did it like the other examples by having one thing in common: intent. Accessibility planned from the start, informed by lived experience, and embedded into policy, architecture, and, of course, daily operations. So we will explore the role models today, and the takeaway will be clear. Inclusive spaces are not something that we just aspire to have. They can be practical, replicable solutions that turn right into the reality and making public spaces truly accessible and public for everyone. So welcome our session hosts and our session guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. My name is Sun Kai Eng. For those who can't see me, I'm a middle-aged Chinese man with rimless glasses and more gray hair than I would like. And I'm wearing a black jacket with a blue tie, and I'm the Deputy CEO of SG Enable from Singapore. So glad to see all of you this morning making it through the snow. And it's truly, I think, magical to see everything covered in white. So I'm really glad that all of you are here at this session with us. And over the next hour, we will explore how inclusion can be thoughtfully embedded into the spaces that we design and manage, and how we can help to build a more inclusive world, one space at a time. So we have a diverse panel for this session. They are from different countries and backgrounds, but they are all champions and advocates for inclusive spaces who have demonstrated the importance and the value of inclusive spaces in their respective domains. Let me now introduce them in the order of presentation sequence. First, Marie-Louise Holst, partner at Matters Architect. She will be presenting on an inclusive school compound in Denmark. And then we have Orr Cohen, founder of Global Ramp. Sagit Hakle, architect and accessibility consultant at Archability. Mikhail Rinde, consultant and lecturer at Ono Academic College. And together, they will introduce you to an inclusive adventure park in Israel, an adventure park for everyone. And third, we have Tatiana Novakovic, accessibility and inclusion officer at the Austrian Parliament, and David Pinchasov, head of dialogue platform at the Austrian Parliament. And both of them will co-present their experience in making the Austrian Parliament building an inclusive place. And last but not least, we have Ryan Smith, founder of the Access Agency. He will share how Parks Victoria in Australia became more inclusive in its approach and offering. So for this session, I will first do a quick sharing of my organization's experience in inclusive spaces, followed by presentations by my fellow panelists. We welcome questions from the audience after all the presentations have been completed. And without further ado, let me now start with my own introductory presentation. I think the clicker is with you. So first, let me introduce SG Enable, where I am from. It is the focal agency in Singapore for disability inclusion and was set up in 2013 by the Ministry of Social and Family Development. Over the past 12 years, we have been working with partners in the public and private sectors to foster inclusion through employment support and through social and community integration. Together with our partners, we developed the disability support ecosystem in Singapore to enable persons with disabilities to live, learn, work, and play across different life stages in a person-centric manner. And before we go on, I thought that it's important to just spend a minute asking ourselves, why are inclusive spaces important and what are they really about? Yes, it is about design that supports everyone, not just persons with disabilities. It can lead to more successful businesses, but I think most importantly, it is about providing dignity to persons with disabilities so that they can enjoy spaces like everyone else. And inclusive design is not just about the removal of physical barriers, but to create a space that is welcoming and enhancing the experience of persons with disabilities and their caregivers who come into the space. And I think that a well-designed inclusive space can really transform one's experience and dramatically improve psychological and emotional well-being. So in Singapore, we have published a playbook on inclusive spaces, and something that came across quite clearly in our extensive engagement with persons of disabilities is that their experience of a space is just, if not more important, than its accessibility. And one caregiver shared with us that what matters most for his child with autism is to be in a safe space where he can interact with the outside world, and what caregivers really yearn for are public spaces that they can enjoy with their loved ones without fear of judgment or discrimination. I feel very fortunate to be working in the Enabling Village in Singapore, which celebrated its 10th anniversary last December. This is an integrated community space that allows for persons with disabilities to interact with the community in a seamless and sustained way. So besides providing training and employment support for persons with disabilities, the village is also an incubator and test bed for new business prototypes and has pioneered several first-of-its-kind initiatives in Singapore over the last decade. So this includes the first inclusive preschool where young children with or without disabilities can come together to learn with each other from a young age, an inclusive community gym, and we have cafes that hire persons with disabilities and retail spaces that showcase their artwork. So truly, for us, this is a very precious, inclusive space that allows us to show what inclusion can be like. At last year's conference, we shared an artist's impression of the Enabling Village's new extension. And I'm proud to share that we have officially launched it in December. Called Vista, it expands our purpose as the focal agency for disability inclusion and allows us to provide more offerings to persons with disabilities and their caregivers. So this includes a future care planning resource center, which helps persons with disabilities and their caregivers to plan ahead for a secured future. It includes an enabling academy to provide support to persons with disabilities in lifelong learning, as well as an independent living studio to train disabled persons to live independently in the community. So just to mention a few examples of what you can find in this new extension. And we are really happy that in November this year, we will be welcoming delegates to the Zero Project Asia Pacific conference in Singapore. And if we would welcome all of you to come and join us and see the Enabling Village for yourself. So this extension is really an important milestone in our journey to create inclusive spaces. And I look forward to my fellow panelists also sharing their own experiences from their own countries and domains. So with that, I conclude my short presentation and I hand over the mic now to Marie-Louise to do her presentation on an inclusive school compound. Yeah.
Hello, as you said, my name is Marie-Louise and I'm from Matters Architects in Copenhagen. I'm going to talk to you about Herup School, which is a project where an old regular school was transformed into a new school for children with special needs, or as we like to say, children with curious brains. The challenge addressed in this project is the creation of inclusive, adaptable, and sensory considerate learning environments in response to the limitations of a traditional school architecture. Our user group mainly consisted of children with autism, ADHD, and socio-emotional difficulties. Children who needed adapted teaching and support in order to achieve their full learning potential. A challenge was that within this user group there were many different types of needs, mostly though they were strongly influenced by sensory input, which often led to sensory overload. Another challenge was that society expects that everyone should be able to be part of a bigger community in order to be successful. But why don't society accept and focus on individual success instead? While framing these questions, we also started researching and analyzing all the schools in Copenhagen, the special schools. We found that the existing spaces were typically tight, messy, and with an overwhelming amount of things clustered inside. This resulted in chaotic interior and visual noise, and this affected the individual. We saw examples of children that needed to stay under the table for a whole day in the need for shielding from the community, others that could only cope with the everyday life in the cupboard of the classrooms. So it was clear there was a need for more shielding and spaces to withdraw. We could also see that children who were affected unnecessarily on their senses and who experienced a lack of impulse control led to confrontations. So we asked ourselves, how can we create inclusive, adaptable learning environments and at the same time assure opportunities for the individual? We needed to assure shielding and time out, to focus on safety and flexibility, to find the right balance between opposites. We needed to create opportunity for physical expression and opportunities to learn how to participate in daily life skills. After many workshops and insights from the educators that is around the children, we worked out that the most important design tool were to balance the opposites in the physical environment. That means calm versus active, recognizable but changeable, darkness but light, alone, together, open or closed, firm and flexible. We also learned that transitions and change in everyday life had a huge impact on many of the children. These can be unpredictable and anxiety-inducing, leading to sensory overload, which limits opportunities for learning. By working consciously with flow and organization, we could give the possibility of finding safety, shielding, and alternative routes throughout the day. And lastly, focusing, of course, on the multisensory impact in our design and architecture to ensure that what we built caters for all people, not also the ones with curious brains. So here it is, existing school from '49. The building featured classical long corridors, various split levels, and classically organized classrooms. It wasn't in any way optimal for the users because of strict layouts, many different levels, and 90-degree corners. By applying our design principles, we created flexible spaces that responded to the sensory and emotional needs. We created a new central ring for smoother movement and connection. This shape pushes in and out, creating organic indoor and outdoor flows. It picks up on all the existing level changes, so everything is accessible. It creates a variation of zones for active play, learning, and supportive teaching. We transformed the existing building mass into classroom, all connected with escape routes to outdoor spaces in various sizes. This makes it possible to easily escape with a kid in effect and allows staff to de-escalate situation without disturbing the rest of the group. This means improving the feeling of a calm and safe atmosphere. And here in the building, you look into the central new space. It's a very calm, welcoming, light-filled space. It's open visually, soft moves, good acoustics, no scary corners, and friendly and warm surfaces. And one of the very small courtyards that gives possibility for withdrawal and escaping to avoid possible escalation of a situation. Looking into the library, calm colors, timber and soft, friendly edges create a welcoming atmosphere. Niches and a large central furniture piece creates a room within a room, forming safe, flexible space for smaller groups that can be opened when that is time for that. Also, we developed a furniture system that could help the children being in the classroom in various degrees, help the kids that was normally placed in a separate room or under the table or in the cupboard. A system that was easy and flexible for the teachers to change when needed and at the same time clean up and create calm space with minimal visual noise. The next step for this project was a new extension just finished, and this is very exciting as it allows us to apply all our findings and learnings in a brand new building. These principles have also been implemented in other new schools in Copenhagen. So, I will end up saying by changing spaces like these existing messy and chaotic environments from this to this, calm spaces, visibility, escape routes, support spaces, and direct access to the outside can make a huge impact on the children's everyday life. Because a space can create feelings such as security, comfort, and excitement or stress. And in the case of Heop School, confrontations between students were halved, confrontations between students and teachers were halved, and teachers' sick days dropped significantly. And these outcomes show how spatial changes matters, and this support both the well-being of students and teachers. And lastly, a quote from the principal: kids that normally was placed outside the space could move back into the space. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Louise. I think that given that we spend our formative years in school where so much valued memories are created, it's so precious to have an inclusive space such as the one that you presented for young children to be able to interact with their friends and teachers. So congratulations on the design of this school, and it's now, I understand, become a role model for other schools to also reference. So really congratulations again. Yeah, so with that, I think I would like to now invite our next presentation team, Sagit and also Mikhail, who will introduce you to an adventure park for all in Israel.
Hi. Our team here, the accessibility consultants, or Cohen, Sagit, myself, and Michal. Michael, a teenager with autism, outgrew the playgrounds. He still wanted to play. His mother wrote to the mayor, "We don't just need a playground, we need a place where we are seen." We chose a central landmark that is anchored by a prominent tree as a natural meeting hub. It has optimal access adjacent to public transportation and parking lot. It is also connected to 2 primary park routes. We imagine a place where people can enjoy themselves without barriers and feel secure. Everything surrounds the enormous tree. We wanted everyone to be able to find their way around the park. We divided the park into zones. Each area is based on an element, something everyone can connect to. Water, being able to touch the water, watch the water, and hear it flow. Air, being able to climb 6 meters high, feeling the breeze, swinging, leaving the ground. Earth, being able to feel the ground beneath you, sensory facilities, music facilities, and running through a maze. Everyone can choose whether they prefer to play by themselves or with others. Here's our vision coming to life. Wayfinding, tactile, simple, visual and auditory maps. The 3 elements, water, being able to touch the water, watch and hear its flow. Air, being able to climb 6 meters high, feeling the breeze, swinging, leaving the ground. Earth, being able to feel the ground beneath you, sensory facilities, music facilities, and running through a maze. Everyone can choose whether they prefer to play by themselves or with others. Yanai is a 10-year-old boy in a wheelchair. His mother, Noah, no longer has to say, "This isn't for you, Yanai." Now she can say, "He belongs here, just like everyone else." Thousands of families who finally feel they belong, that they are seen, they are visible. Guided by Nothing About Us Without Us, a park for everyone with intergenerational spaces for all ages and all abilities. This is an example of co-design.
As you can see here, we created multisensory navigation for orientation in the park. Tactile maps combined with simple language, audio description, and clear visual elements. All elements are coordinated. Numbers on the map match the numbers on each play area. Beyond general wayfinding, children need to orient themselves during each play activity. Here we can see 2 features. First, tactile symbol before each element. Enable identify the type, whether it's a straight slide versus a spiral one, and plan their movement in advance. Second, an intercom allows children to communicate to those waiting below. We divided the park into thematic zones based on universal elements. Now, let me address a critical insight. If you can't stay, you can't play. So we built the service shell, showers, changing room, charging for wheelchairs, and quiet areas. Now, family can stay all long day. What makes this project innovative? The key elements. Universal design from the start, community co-design that included end-user research and built-in features like tactile navigation and the service shells. What can be applied in other places? The methodology, the service model, the design framework, and the core vision. Everyone in, everyone belongs. Michael's mother wrote, "We need a place where we are seen." Today, thousands of families are finally seen. Everyone needs endless adventures. Thank you.
Thank you, Sagit and Mikhail. I think it's a wonderful investment that you have made in this Adventure Park for All to create shared experiences and memories. And what struck me the most is that this is a place that allows persons with disabilities to be visible and part of the community. And just looking at the video and pictures makes me want to be there too. So yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. We will now move to the presenters from Austria, Tatiana and David, who will share with us the experience in making the Austrian Parliament a more inclusive place.
Thank you. My name is Tatiana Novakovic, and I'm Accessibility Officer in Austrian Parliament. Can you go, please? Yes. The Parliament building underwent a complete refurbishment between 2018 and 2022. Since its reopening, large areas have been made freely accessible to visitors. This required a high level of structural accessibility. Wherever possible, all differences in level up to 1 meter are connected by a ramp. We have also installed 70 barrier-free lifts, 40 new stair platform lifts, many doors with automatic drives, and 37 new accessible toilets. And last but not least, safety and evacuation concepts for emergencies take people with disabilities into account. All these measures were implemented despite the building's listed status. This was only possible thanks to intensive and positive cooperation with the National Heritage Agency. This is important to stress because many public buildings around the world are located in old, historic, and probably heritage-protected buildings. And unfortunately, we hear far too often that accessibility measures are not possible due to heritage protection. Our Parliament building demonstrates that both qualities can coexist. And particularly, good example of this in Parliament is the library, which is now largely accessible to many people with disabilities. I would especially like to highlight the workstation in the reading room, a fully equipped PC with state-of-the-art software and hardware for blind and visually impaired people. This station is available for all visitors. And even more complex task was making information accessible to everyone. We had to balance state-of-the-art technology with ways that people with disabilities, visually impaired and blind people actually access information. We opted for QR codes and tried to use these codes for all needs. The codes always have the same tactile symbol. Where there is a QR code or tactile information on a table or wall, there is also always a double square that can be felt on the floor. The information is offered in easy language and plain language in German at 3 different language levels, as well as Austrian Sign Language, audio information in German, or text in English. Next, please. There are many different types of equipment for blind and visually impaired people. Orientation is a basic requirement for independent and self-determined movement around the building. We offer this at the 2 orientation stations in the visitor center. Here you will find a tactile model of the building and tactile maps showing all the levels accessible to visitors, as well as the first floor, which is the ceremonial level with all the assembly halls. We also have detailed tactile plans for the library and reading room, as well as for the National Council Hall and Federal Council Hall. This allows blind and visually impaired people to get an idea of what these rooms look like, where each political group sits, and how the seats are allocated. The surface of each seat has a symbol that is different for each party. We are currently working on a modular solution for these plans. The idea is to make a perforated plate into which the 3D plastic pins can be inserted as seats. This will allow us to easily and immediately update the seating arrangement in the halls after each new election. We are constantly working on improvements and on creating new tools. If you don't keep developing, you won't make any progress. In fact, things will actually get worse. This is why it's important to have someone who is responsible for accessibility in an organization to take on these tasks and drive them forward. David, please.
Okay. Thank you, Tatiana, for showing us all this amazing information about the physical accessibility in the Parliament and the really amazing refurbishment project. But for us, of course, in the Parliament, accessibility doesn't end there. What matters just as much is how we bring this accessibility to life with our educational work in Parliament, for example, with our guided tours. My name is David Pinchasov. I'm the head of the Dialogue Platform, which is a department within the Democracy Educational Division of the Parliament. What do we do with the tours? Since the opening in 2023, in the years after the opening, we had more than 500,000 visitors coming to the Parliament. So this is an opportunity to raise awareness within these tours on the accessibility, and we have special tours on accessibility. We have tours in easy language, tours with sign language interpretation. And what we're especially proud of are also the tactile tools that we developed in the Parliament that allow blind and visually impaired visitors to explore the architecture of the building independently during the guided tours. You can see some of the elements on the photos. We also brought some of them with us. You can see it here. So this is an example for the glass ceiling of the historical plenary hall in the Parliament. And we invite everyone here to book one of the tours. They're available every day. So next, I would like to talk about the democracy education overall, which as a principle has accessibility in all of its aspects. All the workshops, all the tours should be as accessible as possible, but we have also certain offers for special target groups like people with learning disabilities, where we offer the workshop Parliament Easy for You. It was also developed for the Parliament, and it was held, for example, also this week. Of course, on the next slide, awareness is also important internally. So since 2022, we organize every year awareness days for all MPs, for all parties, employees. And this year, for the 5th consecutive year, supported by our management, we will address key topics such as barrier-free elections and inclusion in everyday professional life. And on the last slide, I would just like to mention further campaigns, further ways that we raise awareness. As a parliament, we see ourselves in the also role to set an example. So we have campaigns for the International Day for people with disabilities. We have events like the Zero Project opening events, but also dialogue formats where we discuss with different stakeholders the needs and the important topics within the topic of inclusion and accessibility. So yes, the last thing that I want to say is at the Parliament we say we're the heart of the democracy, we're the heart of our democracy, and so the heart must beat for everyone, without barriers and without exceptions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana and David, for your presentation. I understand that this building was actually built in the 19th century. So I think it's amazing how you've managed to combine both heritage preservation as well as modern accessibility features to make this a truly inclusive place for all. So yeah, really happy to hear about your presentation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I think we have Ryan Smith, who will share with us his experience in making Parks Victoria more inclusive. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for coming along to the session. I know it's the last day and it's a little bit late in the day, so great that you could join us here today, and it's a real pleasure to be talking about this work that's has been completed for Parks Victoria by the Access Agency. For those who can't see me, my name is, I'm Australian obviously, I'm a 50-year-old white male. I have a bright blue jacket on and I'm sitting in my wheelchair. I'm actually blind in my left eye as well. So I'm not trying to collect disabilities, just that's the way life sort of turned out. Yeah, we work on and continue. I just want to reflect, just take a quick second to sort of reflect on some of the things that I've seen throughout the sessions over the past 3 days, and really just tilt my hat towards some of the projects that I've seen. I'm an optimist. I'm a wheelchair user, a person with a disability, and I'm really optimistic about the world after seeing some of the projects that are on stage today, but also that I've seen over the past 3 days. Look, I think it's a good time to be disabled, if I can say that. I think the technology that I've seen, the programs and the projects and the policies that are occurring, and that some of which were showcased over the past 3 days, are incredible, and they're really adding to the quality of life of people like me. It's not perfect. There's work to be done. We all know that, and that's why we're here, because we're passionate about doing that work and making those improvements. I want to talk a little bit about this project. So it's a really important project, very close to my heart. Parks, I feel, parks in the outdoor spaces are sort of the last bastion, the last step, the last set of places that I think are due for opening up, for a more inclusive approach, I suppose, more universal design, more accessibility, I think needs to be incorporated into outdoor spaces. And in particular today, I'm going to talk about national parks. We all know the benefits of being in nature. We know how powerful they can be, and they can be truly transformative. And I can say from personal experience, I love spending time outdoors. I love going camping. I love being in nature, and I find it recharges me. It gives me strength to continue, and really gives me a lot of energy. And I know that's true for people in my community too. It is tricky. Like in Australia, the standards that govern the built environment govern parts of parks, because parks often include visitor centres, car parks, toilets, and the built environment. But there's also elements that aren't covered by the Australian standards of the built environment, 1428 in Australia. And so we're in this sort of quasi-outdoor space that's partly legislated and partly not. And so we decided as part of this project to really reinvigorate a project that was completed 15 years ago by Travability, which was the genesis, I suppose, the version 1, the beta version of this document. So I'm, just to step back a little bit, I suppose, I'm the founder of the Access Agency. We're a small boutique agency, and we specialise in accessible tourism. And so tourism, I think, is an important way to look at how we experience parks, because, a good place to visit is a good place to live, and we know that, at least in Australia, a lot of people that come to Australia want to enjoy the outdoors. It contributes an awful lot to the economy. And we know that parks are vital and valuable assets both for visitors and for residents. Parks Victoria is responsible for 3,000 different land and marine parks, and that's 4 million hectares, which is actually about the size of the Netherlands. So that's a huge amount of space that they're responsible for. And a part of this project was to really drive the awareness around accessibility from the point of view of visitor economy. So we're actually we're educating the park rangers whose day-to-day job it is to maintain those parks, so that they can go into their parks, go into their spaces, evaluate those spaces from an accessibility point of view, and really see where those improvements can be made. This is by no means, Parks Victoria's first step into accessibility and inclusion. They have decades-long pedigree of work that's been done in this space. They have accessible canoe launches for people in wheelchairs. They have accessible accommodation in some of their parks, in their more remote parks as well. They have more changing places toilets than any other state. They have done an awful lot of work in this space, and I just quickly want to recognise some people in Parks Victoria who have put their time into developing both, helping me develop this document, which was delivered for Parks Victoria, but also the work that they've done in the past to make parks more inclusive and accessible. That's Simon Gray, Joe Hopkins, and John Kenwright. Unfortunately, they couldn't come all the way from Australia to Austria today to be here, so it's my job to talk about this project. And looking at the time, I better hurry up a little bit. There's two parts to this document. The first part is educating and explaining accessibility principles to park rangers. So park rangers generally, as you can probably imagine, their job involves fire management, pest management, cleaning spaces so that people can come and enjoy urban and parks further out. So their job is not necessarily around accessibility, and their background is not necessarily around accessibility and inclusion. So the first part of this project and the first part of this document, the manual looks at what are key accessibility barriers and what are the key elements that really need to be addressed. Those things, you know, are things like gradients on ramps, you know, spaces for parking, handrails. They're really looking at, okay, educating people that might not have a lens on accessibility and stepping them into those main barriers. We piloted this project across 5 parks before we went out and rolled it out. It's been rolled out across 25 different parks now. Students and park rangers have used this. It's been a huge success. It's both an educational tool, but also a way to evaluate those parks and find those gaps and really increase those areas of accessibility and inclusion so that everybody can get out and include and be included in parks and go back and feel recharged in the same way I do when I go out into natural spaces. This document's, I'll quickly say, this document's been translated into Spanish, it's been shared in Colombia and Chile, and it's been used as an educational piece and obviously uplifting the accessibility of many parks across Victoria in the past 2.5 years. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ryan. And I know that national parks are some of the most beautiful places a country can offer its people and visitors. So I'm really happy to see how Parks Victoria has taken concrete steps to make the parks more inclusive for all to enjoy. So we have about, now that we've completed all the presentations, we have about 10 minutes or so for the audience to ask any questions. Can I invite questions if you have got any for the panelists? Yes, the gentleman over there. Could I ask you to maybe just identify yourself and the organization you're affiliated with first?
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Ted Drake. I'm with the Intuit, but I'm also on the board of directors for Magical Bridge Foundation for Inclusive Parks. In the United States, we have the ADA, which kind of established a real baseline as to what a park can be, or other spaces can be accessible, but they're really low. Parks can be technically ADA compliant, but they're not really usable for anybody with a wheelchair and other things. And I think the projects, what I've seen today, exemplify where you look at the standards as not the goal, but the standards are like the baseline. And we're gonna take that baseline and go way beyond it. And so I just wanna commend all of these efforts because they're really quite nice.
Yeah, thank you. The lady over here.
Button. My name is Jill. I work with landscape structures actually, as my full-time job is inclusive playgrounds and parks. So like that makes me so happy what you do. I mean, in the States, this concept of inclusive playgrounds and parks in particular has grown so big that it's literally the entirety of my career. I mean, do you all feel in your respective places of the world, do you feel it's growing in the same way, or people are starting to get the same amount of excited?
I'll just jump in and say from the Parks Victoria point of view, there's an awful lot of work being done to really diversify the idea of disability. I think for a long time there, they were just looking at people in wheelchairs and really focusing on mobility. Parks Victoria only 2 weeks ago released or unveiled a new dementia-friendly park and a sensory park, which is not their first one as well. So they're really sort of focusing in participation of all kinds. And I should say, it's not only about that mobility, and that is a baseline, as you mentioned before. You know, we've got these physical accessibility baselines that we need to cover, but how do we really get people to engage on a really deeper level? And how do we do that through sensory things? How do we do that through sculpture, smell even, right? Sound. It's really important, particularly with Parks Victoria, because they run a lot of disability and community programs on their parks. And so that becomes a real differentiator because, you know, school groups and community groups can go somewhere where they know they're going to be catered for specifically. I'm excited about it. I think it's incredible, and I see a lot of work being done.
Yeah, also add to it, I think like also mentioned by our friend here, like also in Israel, the standards are more focused on mobility, as we all know. And I think what is quite special in our perspective is to bring something that is different. Looking on this child with autism, looking at cognitive aspects. Also thinking about a user experience that is better for everyone. Not necessarily like, you know, the defining person with disability. Because if I have a child with disability and I'm also went through a really, really harsh and a bad day, I want to have a better experience, easier experience, to have a better orientation in the park while I'm escorting my child. So I think this is something that in the last few years we understand and better. And to be honest, it's not in the standards yet. Like we don't still have in the standards in parks things that are concentrated specifically on autism or on cognitive aspects, but we wish that after like a best practice like that, it will be also implemented in the standards and the regulation. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Is there any other question? I see a raised hand back there. Do you want to go ahead, please? Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Ian Brown. I'm from an organization called Salzburg Global in Salzburg, Austria. And we're at home in Schloss Leopoldskron in Salzburg. And so I was very pleased to hear about the good relation that our colleagues at the Parliament mentioned with the Bundesdenkmalamt. I'd love to hear more about your experience of balancing these needs of protecting heritage while also achieving accessibility. We find that often, while solutions may exist, they can become prohibitively expensive.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And certainly the historical substance was a challenge, a big challenge in the refurbishment project. And we have to be honest that, of course, for us, inclusion was very important, and we tried to go really above and beyond, but we cannot say that we have completely solved every problem, yes. But for us, it was important because as a parliament, we see ourselves as a role model also. If we can do it, others can do it. So this was so important. And to give you some examples, so the historic double doors in parliament in particular with two wings were a major challenge because most doors have been upgraded to meet the fire security standards, and this makes it even more difficult to meet accessibility requirements due to the locking mechanisms. So the only solution is automatic doors, but these often cause problems in everyday use and require a lot of servicing. So in this case, we have also reached our limits, and there is no solution other than investing more money in converting the doors and servicing them regularly. This is just one example, but we can tell you many, many more, especially in the historic parts of the building. But yes, but for us, especially the new parts of the building, the visitor center, they are completely accessible, and we also received the certificate Fair for All, which we are very proud of for the visitor center. Thank you very much for the question.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Roy Goldenberg. I'm from Tom Tikkun Olam Makers from Israel. I have a question. It's for anyone who wants to pick it. All the projects that you all described are funded, I believe, from public fundings, from municipalities or governments. How do you convey, where you're from, how do you convey the local municipality or the government to invest in accessibility? Because it is a large investment. So what's the story that you are telling? I'm eager to learn.
I would say, there's a legislative element to it. So by law, any new building or any upgrade in Australia needs to be compliant with the building code and AS 1428, which means, there is a baseline. As we said before, there is a baseline around accessibility. Universal design is where that real opportunity exists. And I think as soon as you start having conversations at any level about universal design and really enlightening people on a better user experience, so making things more usable. We know that in the tourism sector, we know that for every $1 spent, universal design returns $13. So the economics are there and the usability is there. You get longer use of a product and it becomes more usable by more people from the day dot. You don't have to retrofit. It just makes economic sense, and it just means that more people can participate from the social side as well.
Yeah, and I also want to add maybe from the public sector aspect, right? Because we consider municipalities as an organization that don't think about the business case here for their customer, residents. And I would also say for a child or for a grown-up that is participating in an activity like that and really feel meaning, eventually it will be more productive, it will be more happy, it will be more motivated, it will return to the society in many, many ways that we can also measure it by money eventually. Because a child or even a grown-up that's going through some kind of a health issue and becoming a person with disability, if will not be included as part of society, eventually the municipality or the government will pay money for mental services, for social services. So I do believe that every participation we are doing, not necessarily in the business, is something that's eventually coming back to society and eventually brings money back.
I think it's a great question because in the case of our project, the school was supposed to be a special school. It was only supposed to tick off the standards. And it was very hard for us to argue that doing it in this way didn't cost anything more, right? Because it doesn't cost more if you actually think it in from the beginning of a design process. And often we've been sitting in situations where if we don't have exact numbers of how much the state can save or the municipality can save the bottom line, they don't want to do it, right? So in this case, it's very hard to measure architecture. So we feel very lucky that in this case, the special needs school, they actually measure these kinds of confrontations and all these things. They have to measure them. So that's the first time we had a building where we could actually go and say, look, it works. And you will save money in the long run, and someone will have a much better life on a daily basis.
I can only support what everyone else already said, and I think that for us, just to give you also an example, when many times when we create inclusive innovations, we meet many, many more demands that we can maybe think of at first. So in the parliament specifically, the tours in easy language are now the most popular ones. We get a lot of bookings from people with also migrational backgrounds that maybe don't speak the language. So it's just interesting, an example that sometimes you create an inclusive program, but you reach many, many other target groups as well.
Well, thank you very much for all the questions. We'd love to take more questions, but actually we're out of time, so we have to draw this session to a close. Just like to thank my fellow panelists for all your wonderful sharing today, and also to the audience for your active participation. And I have learned so much about inclusive spaces myself. I hope that this session has also given you food for thought and insights that you can take away with you. So thank you everyone for your time, and we'll draw this session to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you.